He came home from Barcelona dripping in designer shine and airport perfume. A crisp navy suit, gleaming shoes, sunglasses tossed onto the coffee table like a calling card. The zipper on his monogrammed suitcase purred open, and a gold logo flashed back at me. He grinned the way men grin when they think the world just said yes. Business class was worth it, he announced, stretching like a cat. Boutique hotel. Rooftop views. I'm leveling up, babe. I laughed. Not loud. Just enough air to move the curtains. He didn't like that. What's funny? Everything and nothing. I let the silence breathe before I answered. Because here's the part he never understood. I don't raise my voice when I'm holding the truth. I set it down between us and watch who flinches first. I'm 35. I work network security at a fintech. My job is catching the exact kind of romance people attempt with other people's money. For years, I carried the weight of our mortgage and our groceries and his dreams. Derek, my husband, had a new venture every season. A podcast. A drop-shipping scheme. Consulting. The titles changed. The deposits didn't. He called me rigid with money. I called it making sure the lights worked. I wanted our marriage to be a place where honesty isn't a performance. So I ignored small lies that felt like lint. Late-night meetings. Cash withdrawals with no receipts. A new shirt that somehow cost nothing because he knew a guy. You ever pretend a wobble isn't dangerous because you love the ride? That was me. For a while. He dropped into the corner of the couch like a prince after a parade. You should have seen the tasting menu. They hand you a knife like it has a biography. I smiled and set my phone face down. Inside my chest, something steady clicked into its final position. Because I knew what he didn't know. I knew where the money came from. I knew exactly when it disappeared. 9 nights earlier, our loft was a glass bowl, blue city light, and the whisper of the refrigerator. I was asleep upstairs. Derek patted down to my desk at around 2 a.m., careful with each stare like the wood might tattle. He pressed the spacebar on my work laptop. The screen woke up with the soft glow of systems that never truly sleep. He wasn't sneaky lovable then. He was methodical. He moved the way a man moves when he's sure there won't be consequences. He found a card in a folder, the one I keep for work-related tests. He slid it out, memorized the numbers with a squint, then pulled out his phone. The camera shutter was a tiny insect, ZZZT, 2 quick bites. He wiped the screen with his palm as if that erased intention. Then he clicked the laptop dark, crept back upstairs, and climbed into bed like nothing had changed. I remember waking when the mattress shifted. He smelled like mint and anxiety. I didn't ask anything that night. I lay there and listened to his breath smooth out. In network security, the first mistake people make is announcing that they've seen you. The second is assuming silence equals weakness. I practiced neither. Would you have confronted him right then? Shaken him awake? Or waited for the story to write itself? He started unpacking while I watched the city throw orange against the brick. He described his upgrade the way kids describe summer, names of places he'd only Googled before. He told me the concierge winked when he signed for the watch. He said the ocean near Barcelona doesn't just look blue, it sounds blue. Don't be mad, he added, already rehearsing for a fight. You can afford it, and it made me happy. I tilted my head. How did you think this ends? He shrugged, like ending is a superstition. You'll get over it. You always do. Another laugh escaped me, softer this time. He wins when I explain myself. He loses when I let him listen. He went to shower, off-key humming bouncing against the tile. Steam wrapped the doorway. I stood at the kitchen island and rested my palms on the cool marble. The corner of my mouth wouldn't stop lifting. Not because I enjoyed the hurt. Because clarity can feel like oxygen after a long hallway. He thought he swiped my card. He thought I'd fund the fantasy and swallow the insult. He thought the night was empty and the laptop was just a screen. He didn't know the house he burglarized. He didn't know whose doors he opened. He didn't know which card he took. And that right there is where the story actually begins. My phone started buzzing before sunrise, a woodpecker against the marble island. 1 alert. Then 3. Then a waterfall. I watched numbers march across the screen like bright, expensive ants, designer boutiques, a premium flight, a suite with a view. The timestamps lined up with the hours he bragged about. My bank app drew me a map of his ego. $60,000 in less than a week. Watches. Tailored suits. Tastings that cost more than our car insurance. Barcelona, stamped over and over, like he wanted the city to autograph his life. I didn't panic. That surprised me. Calm spread through my shoulders the way heat spreads through tea. Because the card he stole wasn't a normal card. It was the one I keep for training scenarios, a canary in a velvet mine. A corporate honeypot, seated with controls, tethered to monitoring dashboards, and wired to send automatic flags. Every swipe wrote a sentence in a report I didn't have to type. He thought he was invisible. The system filed him under observable. Another alert flared, rooftop bar, €200 round of cocktails. I could almost hear the clink of the glasses. I opened the admin console I use for simulations. The activities spiked like a heart rate after a sprint. Geolocation tags, merchant IDs, authorization paths, my world, translated into his downfall. I called Renee Park. She answered on the second ring, voice still warm from sleep. I told her about the night at 2 a.m., the laptop glow, the quiet photos, and now this flood of charges that matched his stories. I kept my voice even. It felt like balancing a glass of water to the brim. Renee listened the way good lawyers breathe, deep, careful, economical. Then she laughed, soft and short. Not at me. At the symmetry. She said Derek had essentially robbed a practice grenade with a camera on it. She reminded me that the honeypot program routes alerts to a third-party team and then to federal partners. Every charge, a breadcrumb with his thumbprint baked in. I stared at the kitchen clock. The second hand sounded like footsteps down a hallway. She asked for everything, screenshots, timestamps, the card's assigned program notes. I sent them while we spoke. The thread filled with bright rectangles, approvals, locations, currency conversions, and the merchant categories that only exist for people who collect experiences like trophies. My chest felt strange, sore, but open. I had wanted proof that didn't force me into a screaming match. I wanted the truth to stand up by itself. What do you want to do next? Renee asked. I pictured Derek on that rooftop, making a show of generosity with money he stole from our kitchen drawer of trust. I told her I wasn't confronting him yet. I wanted the pattern complete, the story undeniable. She agreed. Silence can be a professional tool. She said she'd start a file and loop in the proper channels. She told me to document everything and to keep breathing. Another ping. Another Michelin-listed restaurant. 8 courses and a wine pairing. I imagined the server carving a narrative at the table while my phone recorded the moral. Renee and I reviewed the structure of the honeypot card for clarity. Corporate account. Training flag. Automated escalation. The whole pipeline written to catch the greedy and the sloppy. She said juries understand greed. They also understand arrogance. It shows up on receipts. The morning light widened across the brick, turning the room into a quiet stage. I leaned against the counter and thought about the last time Derek said I was too rigid about money. Maybe I was just precise. Precision is what saves lives in my world. Why not hearts? Would you have called him from the airport gate and detonated the truth? Or let the ledger finish the confession for you? I forwarded another batch of screenshots. Renee pinged back with a checklist, dates, copies, a brief narrative. She asked me to write the first paragraph in clear language as if to a stranger. I did. My husband obtained card credentials without permission and used them for personal luxury purchases. It looked cold on the screen. It felt right in my bones. Before we hung up, she said something I kept for later. Every swipe is him tying the knot himself. You just hold the rope steady. I ended the call and stood still long enough to hear the refrigerator breathe. The loft smelled like toast and printer paper. Derek snored upstairs, loose and satisfied, unaware that his ocean blue week had painted him into a box. Another alert chimed. The system did what it was built to do: observe, record, notify. A name I recognized flashed as the receiving agent for our program's federal liaison. The chain had activated. I placed my phone face down and felt the counter cool my palms again. The case wasn't just building, it was self-assembling, clicking into place piece by clean piece. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed patience. And patience, right now, was the sharpest tool I had. I didn't confront him. I watched. Silence is a lab when you know what you're testing for. 2 days after he took the photos, he left a note on the counter. Neat handwriting. Casual apology. Need some time for myself, don't wait up. Translation: I'm vanishing with your credentials and calling it self-care. I didn't call. I lined my tools up instead: bank app, console, shared evidence folder. The loft felt like a theater after the audience leaves. My phone stayed face up beside the sink, waiting for the curtain to rise. The pings started stacking by evening. Rooftop bar. Boutique hotel. Late-night couture. My screen lit the tile like police lights. Merchant IDs plotted a clean arc across Barcelona, geotags nestled along the coast like pearls on a line. I could hear the city in the receipts: forks, scooters, ocean wind. Every alert built a beat into a soundtrack. 2 tasting menus at once. A watch that required a whispered approval code. A private driver. He wasn't hiding, he was performing. The system applauded by filing everything. I mapped a timeline in a simple doc: time, place, amount, category. It read like a travel diary written by a man who borrowed someone else's pulse. I added screenshots, then backed them up to a clean drive. Evidence shouldn't depend on batteries. Would you have stepped in then, or let him believe the world still smiled? On the 4th day, an unknown number flashed. I answered and braced. A steady voice introduced himself: Agent Luis Morales, Financial Crimes. He'd been pinged by our program's escalation chain. He asked if I had a moment to discuss unusual activity tied to a specialized training account. I told him I had more than a moment. I had a marriage. We kept it clinical. I explained the honeypot design: corporate card credentials seeded for simulation, monitored in real time, auto-escalation to federal partners. I described the night Derek accessed my work laptop and captured the numbers. I added what any analyst knows, but most spouses ignore: opportunity announces character. Morales listened without rushing. I could hear keys tapping, notes landing where they couldn't be argued with. He asked if Derek had permission to use the card. No. He asked if Derek knew the account was part of a training program. No, and that's not a defense. He agreed. Intent followed access. He told me what charges would likely appear on the table: unauthorized access, credit card fraud, possibly wire fraud depending on payment rails and currency conversions. He said the case was strong and getting stronger. My documentation would lock the hinges. He cautioned me not to tip Derek off. The best arrests happen when the story still believes it's safe. I opened another folder and labeled it clearly: Turner, Evidence, Chronological. Inside it, the truth looked almost elegant. Screenshots, timestamps, merchant codes, approval paths, geolocation grids. The pattern had no alibi. That night, the alerts kept chiming while the city cooled. A sunset charge hit for a balcony suite upgrade. Another for a late reservation at a Michelin spot that sells memory as a side dish. 2 guests again. I let the detail pass without swallowing it. Some truths can wait their turn. Morales asked permission to coordinate with local officers when Derek returned. He wanted to approach at home, with respect, but with clarity. I said yes. He thanked me for my professionalism. The word felt strange in this context, but accurate: grief wearing a blazer. When we ended the call, I stood by the window and watched the river cut the lights. My heart rate finally matched the room. I didn't need explanations or apologies. I needed the next alert, the next clean line on the chart, the next fact that would stand without my voice. Derek texted a photo around midnight: a skyline, a drink, his watch catching the moon. "You'd love it here," he wrote. I didn't reply. I saved the image and filed it by time and GPS. The case was walking itself home. I only had to hold the door. The front door clicked. Wheels hissed across concrete. He was back, buzzing like a power line after a storm. He rolled the monogrammed carry-on inside and kissed the air near my cheek. The room filled with hotel soap and airplane wine. He thanked me for finally loosening up, then flopped onto the couch like a man returning from war he fought with a credit limit. The sunglasses landed on the coffee table with a tiny, smug clatter. I laughed again. The sound barely moved the air. He frowned. He asked why I always had to be so rigid about money. He described freedom like it was a personality trait I lacked. He said the trip changed everything. He said he felt upgraded. I asked how he thought this would end. My voice stayed level, the way a spirit level stays honest. He shrugged without thinking. He told me I could afford it. He told me happiness should count as a payment plan. He told me I'd get over it because I always did. The lines were practiced. The faith was lazy. He stood, stretching, and disappeared toward the shower. Steam blossomed around the bathroom door. Off-key humming bounced down the hallway like rubber. I stayed in the kitchen, palms on the cool marble. The loft looked different in his absence. Now it simply remembered. I pulled my phone from the charger and opened the thread with my attorney. I typed, "He's back." Renee answered within a minute. She was already in touch with our federal contact. The replies came in short, exact lines. Agent Morales had tracked the entire spree: flights, hotels, boutiques, even the midnight upgrades. Local officers were briefed. Approach would be respectful, calm, at home. Timing flexible. My discretion. I felt my pulse slow. Not joy, precision. There's relief in a plan that doesn't need your volume, only your clarity. Would you press the button now or let him talk himself into a corner? Water-hammered tile. I moved around the space, quiet as a stagehand. I placed my phone on the coffee table, camera down, mic free. I checked storage, battery, and the voice memo settings I'd used for trainings. The phone looked casual sitting there, like a coaster with secrets. Renee asked for a short update she could relay: tone, behavior, anything useful. I told her he'd come home confident and unbothered, bragging between yawns, certain I was the bank of forgiveness. She sent back a single line: "Let him narrate. He will." I walked to the window and watched the city rinse itself in orange. Our building faced the river. The water looked like a belt of copper around the district. Somewhere in that glow, a small version of me exhaled for the first time in months. Not because he was caught. Because I had stopped negotiating with my own boundaries. The shower cut off. Pipes thunked. A wave of warm air rolled out, carrying hotel eucalyptus and the faint salt of travel. I unlocked the phone and started a new recording. The red bar slid open like a curtain. I set it down and stepped back to the island, hands around a glass of water I didn't drink. He emerged towel-wrapped, hair combed into optimism. He tossed a glossy shopping bag onto the sofa and fished out a steel and gold watch. He held it up to the light like a fish he planned to lie about. He began telling me everything without being asked: restaurant names, course counts, how the concierge leaned across the desk when he signed. His grin said the world had forgiven him in advance. I listened with small noises. The recorder listened without judgment. He bragged about cashiers who didn't blink at the totals. He described a rooftop bar where the DJ refused requests, which meant he must be important. He reenacted the feeling of a business-class seat reclining like it respected him. He didn't realize he was reading an itemized confession. While he talked, I texted Renee a single word: rolling. She sent a check mark and a reminder: no confrontation, no warnings. The case would be cleaner if he walked himself into it. He pivoted to philosophy, the kind men adopt after a good steak: life is short, experiences are investments, you can't take money with you. He said marriage should mean sharing. He didn't say stealing. He never does. My chest tightened, then softened. I wasn't jealous of the trip. I was allergic to the entitlement. He looked at me like I was an ATM with a ring on. That's what broke, finally. Not my budget. My worship. The watch clicked onto his wrist with a small, triumphant snap. He asked if I liked it. I told him it was shiny. Accuracy can be so quiet it sounds like agreement. When he yawned and reached for his phone, I excused myself to the kitchen. I wiped an invisible circle from the counter and stared at my reflection in the steel kettle. Calm. Focused. Done pretending. Renee pinged again. Morales can approach tonight or tomorrow morning. Your call. I scanned the room, the couch where we used to plan weekends, the plant that leaned toward the single good window, the suitcase yawning open like a mouth that never learns. I thought about uniformed shoes on our rug, about Wright's red in my living room. I thought about letting him sleep one more night inside the story he wrote. Not yet, I typed. I want one more piece locked. He's still talking. She understood. She always did. She told me to text when I wanted the knock arranged. She told me to breathe and to keep recording. She didn't have to tell me to hold my ground. The ground held me. He padded to the bedroom humming, already planning breakfast like consequences don't eat. The loft settled into evening. Somewhere, an ice maker cracked like a tiny branch. I saved the first file and opened a second, just in case. I stood there and felt the shape of the next hour. Get him comfortable. Let him relive the highlight reel. Encourage detail. Keep my voice low and steady. Some people confess to God. Derek confesses to applause. I slid the phone a little closer to the edge of the table where sound travels clean. Then I did the quietest part of my plan. I waited for the water to stop. The shower hissed off. He reappeared towel-wrapped, glowing like a billboard. He dropped onto the sofa, cracked open his carry-on, and started performing. He pulled out the steel and gold watch, a pair of sleek loafers, a receipt folder thick as a novella. He narrated the week like a travel host: 9 days, 3 rooftops, 2 tasting menus, 1 private driver who knew the back streets. He loved that phrase. It made him sound initiated. I eased a glass onto the table. The phone beside it kept recording. His voice marched into the mic, confident, unedited, proud. He named the boutiques along Passeig de Gracia. He compared 2 chefs like a judge at a quiet war. He described a concierge who didn't even blink at the total. He mimed signing the slip with a flourish, wrist lifted, so the watch caught the light. He said the city felt like it had been waiting for him. I let him breathe between boasts. Each pause filled itself with proof. When he veered into logistics, the evidence sharpened. Exact dates. Exact times. The order of venues. The moment his seat reclined and his champagne arrived like a promise. He laughed at how easy it was. He didn't know the room had ears. Look, he said finally, tapping the watch. A once-in-a-lifetime piece. Memorable, I said. My voice stayed level. The recorder purred. He yawned and wandered to the bedroom to power nap. I saved the file, named it cleanly, and started a second recording as insurance. He slept hard, the kind of sleep borrowed from someone else's wallet. Would you have woken him and ended it right there? Or kept building the spine? Morning arrived with street sounds and a sky the color of calm metal. I met Renee at a corner cafe where the cups clinked like tiny gavels. She wore a navy jacket and an expression that said, "Show me the bones." I slid my phone across the table and opened the folder: alerts, summaries, geotags, the full audio of his victory speech. We listened to a minute. That was enough. Her eyebrows lifted. He narrated the elements, she said. Location, timeline, intent. I added screenshots of the authorization paths and the training card notes. She scrolled, nodding at each escalation step that had already pinged their partners. We didn't need drama. We needed order. The case is airtight, she said, voice low but bright. Unauthorized access to card credentials, fraudulent charges, likely wire implications. He admits knowledge of use and personal benefit on tape. Your documentation bridges every gap. I felt something unclench behind my ribs. Not triumph, oxygen. Renee outlined the next moves with clean strokes. Agent Morales and local officers were briefed. They could approach at the loft, polite but firm. No surprises, no shouting. She advised I avoid confrontation until contact. She reminded me that silence isn't submission, it's strategy. We printed a short summary for the file: dates, totals, program design, and my statement in plain language. She slid copies into a folder and tapped it once, like blessing a ship. 2 choices, she said. Today or tomorrow. Your timing, your space. I pictured him at home, sprawled across the couch he never paid for, scrolling and smirking at photos of a life charged to my trust. I pictured the knock. I pictured his face when the story flipped. Today, I said. My voice didn't shake. Renee texted Morales a single line and a pin. A reply came fast, coordinating. Respectful approach. A wait-go signal. We stood to leave. The door chimed as if announcing a verdict. I stepped into the street feeling strangely light, like the city had handed me back my spine. Back at the loft, I arranged the documents, checked the recordings, and set water to boil for tea I wouldn't finish. My phone buzzed. Morales. Units ready within the hour. Confirm? I stared at the doorway that had welcomed everything and everyone, including this. I touched the edge of the coffee table where his sunglasses still rested, a little monument to entitlement. I typed one word back to Morales and hit send. Then I listened to the building breathe and waited for the knock. 3 firm knocks cut through the loft, bright as a gavel. I stood. The hallway smelled like dust and rain. Agent Morales waited with 2 uniformed officers. Badges gleamed, a radio whispered. I stepped aside and let the cool air follow them in. Derek was on the couch, scrolling, a king between commercials. Derek Turner? Morales's tone was steady. You're under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized access to a financial account. We'd like you to come with us for questioning. Have you ever watched a lie hear its own name? Color drained from his face. He glanced at me, then back at the badges, a quick ping-pong of panic. This is a mistake, he blurted. Babe, tell them. She said I could use the card. I folded my arms. Calm settled into my bones like weight in a boat. You've been very busy, I said. Husbands aren't supposed to siphon money from their wives. Morales continued, precise as a metronome. You have the right to remain silent. The room slowed to each syllable. Derek shook his head, mouth working without words. The officers stayed respectful, hands visible, posture open. I didn't know, he tried, voice cracking. I thought, she handles the money. I thought it was fine. My silence did the math for him. The receipts already had. He reached toward his pocket like he'd discovered a magic sentence. An officer gently redirected his hand and eased him to his feet. The cuffs clicked, small and final. For a second, he looked 12, caught with a pocket full of stolen candy. He searched my face for softness he no longer rented. Please, he whispered. Just say it was a misunderstanding. I saw our mortgage, my night shift brain, the long ledger of excuses. I saw the watch winking on his wrist like a punchline. This is you, Derek, I said softly. Own it. Morales nodded once, a professional courtesy, and guided him toward the door. Rights finished. Process beginning. The elevator chimed like a clean page turning. The loft exhaled when they were gone. His sunglasses still sat on the table, smug and abandoned, a tiny monument to what he believed I'd forgive forever. My phone buzzed, a text from Renee, at the station with Morales. We'll update. I picked up the glasses and set them in a drawer I no longer planned to open. The room felt bigger, quieter, honest. What would he say without an audience, and what would the paperwork say back? My phone lit up before the elevator cables stopped humming. Renee was at the station with Morales. The line clicked to life. She spoke in clean, measured sentences. Derek was already rewriting history. He told them I'd given permission, that we were free with money, that the card was ours. He called himself misunderstood, not malicious. I could hear the fluorescent lights in the background, that thin electric hiss that makes truth sound sharper. Renee didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The record kept speaking. Automated alerts. Merchant logs. Geotags wrapping a tidy loop around Barcelona. The training card notes that documented escalation in real time. And then the part he gifted us himself, the bragging monologue I'd recorded in our living room. Intent, benefit, timeline. Neatly narrated by the defendant. Would you feel sorry for him there, or finally feel nothing at all? An hour later, Morales called me directly. His tone stayed professional, almost gentle. Derek had admitted using the numbers, but insisted he didn't know the account was part of a fraud simulation. He tried to staple the blame to my job, to the fog of mixed finances, to love that supposedly waved receipts away. Morales acknowledged it, then set it aside. Access without permission. Purchases for personal gain. Documented knowledge of use. He said they were moving forward on multiple counts. He also told me something that let my lungs expand. Purchase protection had already triggered. The charges were reversing down the line. I wouldn't owe a cent for his fantasy week. Relief didn't cheer. It just sat beside me, quiet and solid, like a friend who knows when not to talk. By afternoon, the ripples began. A courier arrived with a seizure notice for high-value items tied to disputed transactions. The watch case left the loft in a gray evidence bag. 2 upcoming trip confirmations pinged his email and bounced back canceled. His accounts froze one by one, each portal greeting him with a red lock icon and a phone number he couldn't charm. The social part came next, fast and petty. A mutual friend texted a screenshot of a neighborhood forum already chewing on a half-true version of events. Someone used the word fraudster like they'd been waiting to. Another person posted a blurred photo from the station, hungry for comments. I put my phone face down and breathed through the noise. Facts were doing better work than gossip ever could. Renee checked in again that evening. She'd sat across from Derek while his story deflated. He tried the confused husband routine. He tried, she handles all the money. He even floated a line about shared marital assets, as if vows convert theft into borrowing. The audio wiped it clean. The card's design wiped it cleaner. You can't pretend a fire alarm is a doorbell because the sound is inconvenient. Formal charges by morning, she said. He'll be processed, then out on conditions. This will move toward a plea unless he wants court. Her voice carried the weight of 100 cases that had ended exactly where this one was headed. That night, the loft felt different in my skin. I opened windows and let the city breathe through the rooms. I cooked something simple and ate at the counter where his sunglasses had once performed importance. I slept with my phone on Do Not Disturb and dreamed about quiet, not revenge. Morning brought structure. Morales updated me with the counts, the conditions, the timelines. He thanked me again for the clarity of my documentation. I thanked him for never rushing the edges. We spoke like colleagues, which was strange given the subject and also exactly right. Grief had finally taken off its costume. Within days, the outer circle reacted the way outer circles do. Half our casual friends went silent, waiting to see who would win. The other half sent textbook texts, here if you need anything, so sorry, can't believe this. I believed it. Derek had been rehearsing this fall for years. He just hadn't expected a stage with lights. Brianna, the rumored affair who once hovered at the edge of our plans, detached with surgical speed. Word traveled that she'd blocked his number, returned a small gift, and made a public point of working late. People know how to back away from smoke when the sirens start to show up. The last bits of his theater collapsed on their own. The boutique put a hold on the watch warranty pending ownership verification. The hotel flagged his profile. A travel app removed his VIP badge like a sticker peeled off a lunchbox. Prestige is a costume that doesn't survive rain. Would you have texted him then, one last cut, or let the silence keep the shape? I chose the latter. I organized the final receipts, labeled the audio files, and signed the statements Renee prepared. She dropped by with a copy of the formal complaint, 3 neat pages heavy with dates. We didn't toast. We didn't gloat. We stood at my counter and acknowledged math. That evening, the sky melted from steel to violet. I stood at the window and watched the river carry the city's lights east, like someone gently turning a beaded curtain. Somewhere across town, Derek was learning the choreography of consequences, appointments he couldn't reschedule, signatures he couldn't stylize, terms he couldn't outtalk. The phone lit again, an unfamiliar number, a voice I hadn't invited in weeks. He wanted to explain. He wanted to rewind the tape to before the click. I let it ring twice more, then answered, steady as a level line. Because sometimes closure needs to hear itself say no. The number was strange. The voice wasn't. I let it ring twice, then answered. He started fast, like speed could outrun facts. He said he never meant for it to spiral. He said the trip got away from him. He said stress, pressure, and 1,000 soft excuses that used to work on me. I kept my breath even. You went into my work laptop at 2 a.m. You took card credentials without permission. You charged around $60,000 in 9 days. You recorded your joy on my couch. Silence dripped through the line. I could hear an air vent, a chair, the scrape of pride. He tried a different angle. He asked if I loved him. He said love forgives. He said we could fix this together if I just told the story the right way. He wanted the word misunderstanding. He wanted the phrase mix-up. He wanted the exit door I used to hold open. Would you have softened there? Would you have bent the truth to keep the old shape? I loved a version of you that didn't take, I said. That man wasn't a thief. My voice didn't shake. His did. He promised he'd repay it all if I helped him avoid charges. He said he'd change. He said he'd go to therapy. He said the future could be different if I signed a statement saying he had permission. No, I answered. You had permission to be my husband. You used it like a passcode. He breathed hard into the phone, then quieted. The chair creaked again. He asked me to talk to Agent Morales, to his public defender, to anyone who could soften the fall. I told him I wasn't his spokesperson or his shield. Not anymore. He tried one last trick, the one that used to crack me. He sounded small. Please. I ended the call. My hand didn't tremble when I set the phone down. The loft stayed still afterward, like the room had heard me decide. A minute later, a text arrived from Renee, checking in on my spine. I told her about the call in 6 clean lines. She sent back a thumbs up and a promise. The process was moving. I didn't have to move with it. Days stretched exactly the way calm stretches, unremarkable and priceless. Morning coffee. A quiet inbox. Sleep that didn't negotiate. I worked. I ran by the river. I answered only the calls that carried facts, not feelings. About 10 days later, Renee asked to meet. We chose the same cafe. The cups still made gavel sounds. She slid into the seat across from me with a folder and a steadiness I could lean on. Plea offer, she said. He's taking it. I focused on the tables would grain while she outlined terms in human words. No prison if he stays clean. Full restitution, scheduled and supervised. Community service, hundreds of hours, not symbolic. Mandatory financial counseling. Probation that actually means something. And credit scorched for years, which will keep him from playing this game again. I waited for that old ache to kick. It didn't. Relief sat down beside me and opened a napkin. It fits, I said. Not revenge. Proportion. Renee added one more page, almost as an afterthought. He'd asked, through counsel, if I would provide a character statement to the judge. A "she knows I'm a good man" paragraph to smooth the corners. I smiled without humor. He's still shopping for shortcuts. She nodded. Will decline. Your documentation is your statement. We signed what needed signing. Ink felt final in a way sighs never do. She explained the restitution flow, how payments would route, what to expect, what to ignore. She said he'd be out there for a while, working under the weight he created. She said my part was done, except for the clean endings, separation, then divorce. On my walk home, the city sounded different. Less metal. More wind. I passed a storefront that used to make me think of Derek's unstarted projects. Today it looked like a mirror that finally pointed away from me. At the loft, I opened a drawer and found his last small artifacts, a cufflink without a pair, a receipt for a dream he tried to buy with my trust, a key he no longer owned. I put them in a plain box and sealed it with painter's tape. I wrote his name in block letters and set it near the door for a courier. That evening, an email landed from Morales. Brief and gracious. Plea accepted. Conditions set. Restitution schedule confirmed. He ended with a line I saved. Thank you for your professionalism and patience. Not many people hold both at once. I stood by the window with a glass of water and watched the river unspool the day. Somewhere, Derek was learning how to be supervised. Somewhere, his watch sat in an evidence locker, quiet as a lesson. Would you feel triumphant here, or just ready to stop feeling at all? I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I took the first deep breath that didn't share oxygen with a lie. Then I made a small list on a sticky note, change the locks, call the painter, choose a color that looks like morning. I stuck it to the fridge and turned off the kitchen light. The loft held its new silence the way a healed muscle holds weight, without complaint. Papers still waited. So did the life on the other side of them. The envelope landed at noon, heavy stock, clean edges, no drama. I signed where the tags told me to sign. Pen clicks. Paper slides. A name untied from a name. The loft listened. That's how it felt, like the room had ears and was finally hearing the truth. I poured a small glass of red and sat on the floor where the sun warms the wood. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was breathable. I looked around at the space we had once called ours. His sneakers were gone. The suitcase that performed importance was gone. The watch case had left weeks ago in a gray evidence bag, and the absence fit better than the object ever did. I could feel tension leaving in increments, like a long exhale leaving the body it forgot it lived in. I opened my laptop and cleaned the last crossings. Subscriptions switched to my name or canceled. Shared accounts severed. A final autopay toggled off, the way a porch light clicks out when guests have gone home. The dread that used to hum under everything, rent, groceries, short-term loans, wasn't humming. Relief didn't cheer. It took a chair and stayed. The phone buzzed. "Renee, I'm 5 minutes out." I answered the door to her navy jacket and a folder that matched the envelope's weight. We sat at the island like we had a dozen times, but this time the air didn't brace itself. She slid the restitution update across the marble, dates, amounts, the pipeline that would bring money back on a schedule he couldn't decorate. Then the dissolution of marriage confirmation, final and bloodless. We reviewed the simple miracles. No shared debt lingering, my credit intact, the account notes reflecting completion rather than crisis. She asked how I was holding up. "Relieved," I said, surprised to hear it out loud. "Not angry." "Good," she answered. "Anger is a bridge you already crossed." We signed the last pages. Her pen made small, satisfied scratches. She tapped the stack with 2 fingers, an old lawyer's ritual, and smiled the kind of smile that doesn't need teeth. "You didn't just survive paperwork," she said. "You reclaimed your life." The word reclaimed placed itself in my chest like it belonged there. For years I had been the scaffolding holding up a building that kept leaning. Now the structure stood because I'd taken down what didn't serve it. How had I lived this long with a knot where my breath should be? I'd changed the smart lock code while she packed her bag. The keypad beeped in a pattern no one else knew. I renamed the Wi-Fi network, nothing petty, just a quiet boundary. The ring came off without a fight. I didn't throw it. I put it in a small velvet pouch and marked a date on the calendar to decide what to do with it when the story felt old. Would you keep a souvenir of pain or let it become a receipt and move on? Renee stood, gathered her folder, and looked at me the way people look at a cliff when they're finally standing on the safe side. "Call if you need anything. Or don't. Sometimes not needing is the point." We hugged, brief, human, and she left me with a stack of papers that didn't feel like a burden. After she was gone, the loft stretched. I walked room to room like a curator in a museum I actually owned. I aired out the bedroom. I opened drawers that now held only things I chose. I wiped the line of dust where his trophies used to sit and watched the clean wood appear underneath, simple and honest. My inbox held messages that had waited politely for this moment. The painter's estimate, an invite from Tasha for Sunday brunch, a travel alert I'd set months ago for a quiet coastline with off-season prices. I replied to each without bargaining with someone else's disappointment. "Muted blue for the walls, please. Brunch at 11. And yes, that window seat by the sea." I warmed leftovers and ate standing, the way I do when I'm thinking. The spoon clicked against the bowl. The city softened against the windows. A siren slid by and dissolved into distance. For the first time in a long time, my body believed me when I said we were safe. I took out a fresh notepad and wrote 3 lines. Paint the loft. Book the trip. Stop financing anybody's fantasy but mine. I stuck the list to the fridge where his sunglasses used to brag. The rectangle of paper looked unremarkable and perfect. Night arrived in layers. I washed the glass, turned off lamps, and stood at the window the way I used to stand at problems, except this time there wasn't one. Across the river, office floors went dark one by one, like blinking systems powering down after a clean deployment. Behind me, the signed papers lay stacked and quiet. Ahead of me, a room waited for color. Somewhere in between, a life I didn't have to justify warmed its hands and got comfortable. Tomorrow, I'd pick the paint and book the ticket. Tonight, I memorized the sound of a home that finally belonged to me. The roller whispered across the wall, leaving a band of muted blue behind it. The color looked like morning after rain. It felt like permission. I moved slowly, cutting clean edges, taping corners, letting the room relearn itself. The place breathed easier with every stroke. Cabinets wiped down. Shelves cleared. A lamp turned toward a chair that finally belonged where it stood. I didn't rush. Precision is its own kind of peace. Tasha came by with coffee and a bag of cinnamon rolls. We sat on the tarp and broke them apart like a tiny communion. She asked how it felt. I told her the truth, lighter, quieter, normal in a way I had missed. We planned brunch for Sunday and laughed about nothing important. My laughs didn't need to cover anything. After she left, I opened the balcony door and let the air roll through. The city hummed without crowding me. I boxed up the last of his forgotten things and set the parcel by the front door. A courier label waited. I didn't need a ritual, I needed space. Would you keep a souvenir of pain, or let absence be the trophy? I booked the ocean trip that afternoon. Off-season, small hotel, a room with a window that faced the horizon. No itinerary. No performance. Just pages, waves, walks, and the practice of noticing where my shoulders sit when I'm alone. The coastline smelled like salt and new starts. I walked the shore until my feet learned the rhythm. I read in the shade and ate simply. On the second evening, I stood by the water with a glass of mediocre wine and realized it tasted perfect because no one else needed it to be impressive. An email slid in from a familiar address, long, regretful, soft around the edges. He wrote about changing, about lessons, about the man I'm becoming. He asked if I could meet once, for closure. He asked for words I didn't owe him. I didn't reply. I archived it and watched the ocean erase a line of footprints, tidy and final. Back in the city, the loft welcomed me like a clean page. The blue walls held the light. I swapped out the couch we'd argued over and chose one that fit my height, my back, my Sunday naps. I hung a photo I took years ago on a mountain trail. The sky in it looked like possibility more than weather. Renee stopped in with the final restitution schedule and a gentle smile. We signed 2 more confirmations. Everything felt administrative, not emotional. She asked if I'd thought about what comes next, beyond quiet. I told her I wanted to focus on work and on building an emergency fund for joy, trips, books, a class that has nothing to do with my career. She nodded like a coach who sees a player finally run the right route. Through friends, I heard what I was meant to hear. He'd moved back to a small suburb with his parents. Part-time shifts. Community service. Payments crawling out each month, steady and supervised. The watch was gone, the VIP badges gone, the chorus of approval gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt distant, the way you feel about a storm that already passed over someone else's town. On a Saturday, I sold the ring through a notarized service that handled everything by mail. No drama. The credit hit my account a week later. I split it, half to a Women in Tech scholarship fund, half to a future mountain rental I hadn't booked yet. Money can be a bruise, or it can be a decision. Sunday brunch with Tasha became a ritual. We shared eggs and small plans. We practiced talking about good news without apologizing for it. Sometimes we sat in easy silence and watched people pick their seats. Silence is richer when it isn't afraid. One evening, I stood at the window with coffee and watched the city light up floor by floor. The river held the reflections like a calm witness. My phone was quiet on the counter. My laptop slept. The blue walls did their soft work, turning the room into something that matched my pulse. What do you call a life that finally fits? I made a short list for the next season. Present a new security workshop at work, take a long weekend in the mountains, host one small dinner where no one performs. The list looked humble and exact. It looked like me. On the balcony, the air cooled. I poured a glass of red and leaned on the railing. Somewhere below, a bus sighed and moved on. Somewhere across town, somebody else practiced excuses. I didn't need to hear them. I raised the glass, not high, not theatrical, just enough. To the woman who waited for proof and then believed it. To the walls that remember only what I choose to keep. To the ocean that taught my feet a better pace. Then I stepped inside, closed the balcony door, and let the quiet hold. I didn't get him back. I got myself.